Hey there, this is PR Ganapati, the host of the Blue Skies. Welcome to this last episode of season one, where we're going to dive into a very interesting subject with three legends in the field of aviation photography. I know you all enjoy watching videos and photographs of fighter aircraft and helicopters and transports doing their thing. And now we're going to go behind the scenes and understand how it's done. However, I want to take a minute to thank you all. Over 58 episodes, 46 guests, almost 4,000 minutes of audio, and 80,000 downloads. We've had a great time together understanding some aspects of Indian military aviation. I want to thank you, dear listener, for being so patient with me as I learned this medium, and to the guests for their service and their time. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back in a few months with season 2. In the meantime, please catch up on past episodes that you may have missed. You can also amuse yourself by taking a quiz based on the content of the first 45 odd episodes by going to blueskiespodcast.com/quiz. You never know, there may be prizes for the top 3 winners. Okay, that's all from me. On to the last episode of the season.
Just on 2, clear takeoff, left hand. Takeoff left, left left, slim west, copy.
Hello and welcome to the Blue Skies podcast. I'm PR Ganapati, your host.
Just 70, Roger, report time southeast, credentialed, for commit wise, and able to select this.
Today we have a slightly different episode. We have a very interesting set of guests, 3 guests in fact, unlike our usual format of just one guest. And these are 3 guests whose work you're probably extremely familiar with. And if you're as crazy about aircraft as I am, their names are also probably familiar to you. Today we're talking about aviation photography. The lovely pictures that you see of a Su-30 landing at sunset, or of an aircraft streaking low over the desert countryside. And so we have 3 guests in no particular order. We have Angad Singh, who goes by Zone 5 Aviation. Welcome to the program, Angad.
Thanks for having me, Guns.
Then we have in Bangalore Sanjay Simha. Sanjay has Velocity TTL, and he has this fantastic calendar that he produces every year. Welcome, Sanjay.
Thank you, Guns, and good morning.
And we have joining us from California late in the evening for him is Kedar Karmakar, whose work you've probably also seen. And to the envy of all of us, he has the opportunity to shoot aircraft from all over the world. So welcome to the program, Kedar, and thanks for doing this so late in the evening.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Guns. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Super. So guys, I'd just like to, start off as I do with all my guests, just to love to hear your background growing up, what got you interested in aircraft and what got you interested in aviation photography. So maybe we'll start close to home with you, Sanjay.
Yeah, Guns, basically, I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. My childhood dream was to be a MiG-21 pilot, not any other fighter, MiG-21. And that got me going. And I guess being in Bangalore, which is for India the home of aviation, with HAL being here and AST also flying different types of aircraft, that motivated me much more to gravitate towards military aircraft. However, since that didn't happen, I didn't qualify to be a pilot. I stepped on to what my dad was doing. My dad was a photojournalist with Deccan Herald in Bangalore, and I took up photography for only aviation as a hobby. So this hobby got me closer to aviators and aeroplanes. And that's how I'm here today.
Okay, and which year approximately was this? And was this the film and slide film era?
I haven't done slide films, but yes, negatives, film cameras. Yeah, so I guess it's been about 23, 24 years now since I started photography. Yeah.
Fascinating. And how about you, Angad? I know you have an Air Force connection, but what really got you into this?
Yeah, no, I had actually, for me, I would say it was two things. There's the family connection, of course. My great grandfather was Royal Indian Air Force, then Indian Air Force, and retired as vice chief. And I was lucky enough, to have our lives overlap, which is kind of unusual for great grandparents. But I was lucky enough to sort of grow up, at least the very earliest years of my life, spending time with him and my great grandmom in Chandigarh, and surrounded by his memorabilia and his paintings and his. There was a seat from a Dakota, I think, or an IL-14 in his house and things like that. Um,
Wow.
and of course, my uncle Pushpinder Singh, who was pretty much the historian of the Indian Air Force for the better part of 50 years, unofficial historian, I should say. So I almost I had no choice. I grew up surrounded by people mad about aviation. My own father as well. So it was sort of baked into me from an early age, and um, I studied English in college, and then wanted a magazine job, and so I worked for Vayu Aerospace right out of college, and that sort of really gave me the exposure and the access to sort of really exercise my camera and my pen around aircraft and aviation.
Lovely. And Kedar, how about you? I know you're also a pilot, of what I seem to remember, an FAA certified pilot, right?
Yeah, like I I gave up flying though. My last flight was in 2017. Uh, no time basically uh, between the travel and shoots exactly. So my story is a bit longer story because there is no family connection. I was never near an airbase. Nothing. It's just I guess God given that I had an interest in the military aviation side. And I remember spending my time in like the old bookshops where they had those commando comics and some other books, which used to detail about first started with the commando comics with these sketches of Spitfires and Hurricanes and Messerschmitt Stockholms and all that bombers and all that stuff. And later on, I was fascinated by the whole military aviation, the jet age, and all the other phantoms and tornadoes, MiGs, Mirages, whatever the whole works. So yeah, I don't know, like it was just God given. God put that module in my brain and sent me on Earth, I guess. But again, like my plan A was kind of like Sanjay to join the Indian Air Force and be a fighter pilot. I didn't know about MiG-21s and all that, so I could have been on any fighters. But again, like some people joke with me like it's their bad luck and that I didn't make it through. So I went to Plan B, which is again like not bad at all. Basically, like my this thing with photography started when again I came here in the US. Um, in back in Bombay, there was again when by the time I was growing up, there was no air shows, there was no parades or whatever, and even photography was expensive. Back in the time. So my whole thing started when I came here in the US in '99, and I was on the flight path of the Moffett airfield.
Ah,
And
okay.
yeah, I came in May, and they had an air show in I guess June or something, and I was just like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, oh, that's an F-15. Oh, that's a Hornet. I've heard about that. And like talking to the guys, I can touch the aircraft and all that, and that's when my journey started. Used to shoot film and slides, and just do local air shows, like like my just San Francisco or maximum. And then later on, as time grew by, then that's how I kind of caught on, the whole digital revolution as well in photography. So yeah.
Lovely. And for those who don't know, NASA, Moffett Field is a NASA field and also has, I think, Air National Guard, California Air National Guard, right?
Yes, yeah, they have the C-130s and the Wavehawks.
Right.
Yeah.
Super. So let's stay with you since you spoke about first slide film and then digital. So, what sort of equipment should somebody interested in aviation photography at the very minimum possess? And what is your preferred equipment in terms of body, in terms of lens, and what do you use? We'll start with you, Kedar.
Okay. So as far as the body is concerned, body is fine. Like, one should invest in good quality glass, because, like, when I say glass, it's the lens that I mean. And because lens, like, they last around for a much longer time than a body. So minimum should be around like 400 millimeter. I think would be the best one. And then you get, different bodies, crop bodies or full frames, and depending upon your reach, you can have like a crop body. You can get a 600 effective, or I think with Canon it's a 1.6 multiplier, so you get more. So yeah, so and then when I used to shoot Minolta before, Minolta camera film. But then when I was on the cusp of the whole digital SLR revolution, Nikon was, top with the 70 cameras, and I've made my investment in the Nikon line of, cameras. So that's what I use today. Like, it's just a Nikon gear, the camera and the lens, and again, different lens for different stuff that I'm doing. Right.
Hmm. Okay, super. We'll come back to which lenses and how fast and things like that. But how about you, Angad? What do you use, and what do you recommend somebody gets at the very minimum?
Oh, I'm a Canon man, but not not because it's any sort of major preference or advantage. That's just the system I started out using when I began spending my own cash on gear. There was a cousin of mine who also shot digital at the time, and I just figured, if I could share her lenses and her bodies, then why not? So it was more a question of convenience and expense for me at the time. But at the risk of repeating a cliche, it's not really. I mean, the camera and the lens is rarely the limiting factor. So you have to know what you're doing, and you have to have a decent idea of what you want to get out of a given shoot or a given day at the fence even. And you can probably get by with fairly modest equipment. I mean, I've seen folks frankly do a job a hell of a lot better than me with equipment that costs orders of magnitude less. So sometimes it just comes down to a better vision or a better edit or whatever. And I mean, on that subject, editing is not the kind of evil that people think it is. All photos are edited to some degree, whether by software or by hand. And there's no sense in if you view photography as art, as I do anyway. There's no sense in getting precious about editing as a bad thing. Just it's part of the entire process from the moment you drop that shutter to the moment you are satisfied with the finished photo.
Right, right. Super, thanks. And how about you, Sanjay? What do you use? What do you recommend people get?
So guns, for any photo shoot that I go to, I always carry a minimum of two cameras with two different lenses fixed attached to them. And
Okay.
I'm a Nikon guy from the beginning, right from a Nikon FM2 to graduating to a Nikon F55 to now I use Nikon D850, D800E, things like that. So even my lenses are all Nikon. But two camera bodies and at least two lenses is what I would always recommend. And it depends. One would probably be. I mean, it depends again where I'm shooting. If I need a 400 lens, that would be the one, or a slightly smaller lens. It can be a 70-200 or 80-200, or even a wide-angle lens. It depends. However,
Wow.
what I would like to add, of course, I go with what my colleagues here said. Definitely good to do, good to learn from them. I also carry a lot of memory cards. I've had issues with my memory cards going fut just in the middle of a shoot because it's overused or it's whatever some issue, technical issue, and
Right.
so I carry for every shoot. You won't believe it, but I at least pick up two new memory cards just as a standby. In spite of having say
Wow.
about 8 or 10 memory cards which are older ones. and I just carry some memory cards. And of course, batteries. Batteries are another issue because sometimes, depending on where you're shooting and the climatic conditions,
Hmm.
especially in high altitude, cold weather conditions, I have seen that the batteries do drain out pretty quickly.
Wow.
So I carry extra batteries for the bodies that I'm having with me, the camera bodies that I'm having with me. But yes, in spite of all this, there can be some certain technical issues, and I think you'll have to just think on your feet at that point of time and see how you can resolve it. And if I'm doing a night shoot, I carry a tripod. Yeah,
Yeah, I was going to come to tripod but when you're shooting aircraft that are in motion, I presume a tripod is too unwieldy, right?
correct. So it is only I use the tripod only for long exposure shots. Otherwise, it's all handheld photography.
Okay. And there are also, these kind of shoulder mounts and things like that, particularly a heavy lens and a camera allows you to handle it more easily. Have any of you used anything like that to catch aircraft in flight, or you feel it's not particularly useful?
I have tried it, but it was quite uncomfortable for me. So I still use even the heavier lenses like the 600 mm. Even the 400 mm gets quite heavy if you're holding it for, let's say, more than half an hour. So I still use my hands to focus on the aircraft more than any other support that I can get. Yeah,
Yeah, I used something called a photo sniper once. It's basically a gun-shaped mount for ostensibly for heavier lenses. But like Sanjay, I think I found it a bit unwieldy at the time. It looked cool, but it was not. It was not. It was not. It didn't eventually end up being useful. I used something. I used like these sling straps. So that effectively allows the cameras to be hands-free, hanging from my shoulders when I'm not shooting. Like Sanjay, I use two cameras, so the sling straps are convenient enough from that point of view. You can walk around and I mean, even run around to get to the right place at the right time. Hands-free, and then you can let one camera hang and use the other as needed. It's pretty useful.
Super. Coming to aviation photography as a field, in your opinion, what is different about aviation photography from other types of photography? The obvious ones obviously are, motion or high speed and so on and so forth. But just love to hear how you guys think about it, and what skills should one develop? What methods might one use to develop those skills? And we'll start with you, Angad. And
I mean, honestly, I think to a great extent, it's from a technical standpoint, it's photography, right? It's not. I mean, depending on how you're what you're shooting and how you're shooting, it's not too different from, say, motorsports photography or wildlife photography to varying degrees. The speed does come into it, with aircraft in flight. But bird photographers have similar challenges with similar lenses that we do. I think, again, as with most kinds of photography, it comes down to the subject, less so than the technique and the technical elements. And I think with aviation photography, a lot of it is, um, and I think that's the unifying factor between aviation photographers. And I'm sure Sanjay and Kedar will agree with me on this. Is it's about that passion for your subject and knowing your subject, and eventually being able to live and breathe planes feeds into your photography of said planes. So knowing how planes behave, how they what they're capable of, what speeds you're looking at for landing, for takeoff, what um, uh, almost predicting or knowing what maneuvers are coming, even if you've never seen an air display before, a particular type's air display before. You just know that after this loop, he's likely to uh, set up for a fast pass or a topside pass or whatever. And of course, there's there's that element of unpredictability as well that goes into it, which again, speaking at least for myself, but Sanjay and Kedar might also agree with me on this. You think you know what you're doing, and then a plane surprises you, and you get that sort of almost once in a lifetime shot where you weren't expecting something, which is equally as
right.
interesting.
Hmm. How about you, Sanjay? What is your perspective on how is it different? What skills are required?
So, Guns, I agree with Angad that you should know your subject. Just like in wildlife photography, you should know the animals and surroundings. Aviation also, you should know a little bit about the aircraft. There are certain unique features of every aircraft. Like for example, the lines of a Jaguar fighter aircraft is something that I always look forward to photograph because the Jaguar is a very photogenic aircraft. Similarly, there are other aircrafts which have their own unique features, and we look out for that. Uh, then the other thing is how does it behave in the air, and how does it actually? What are the key performances when it's landing or when it's taking off? You probably should know a little bit, or should have observed at least a little bit about what is the kind of smoke that. To give you an example, what is the kind of smoke that comes up when it hits the runway while landing? So these are kind of some or an afterburner shot while taking off and things like that. So these are things which I guess over a period of time people will come up with their own visualization of what is it that they need to take. And I've always believed before a picture has been clicked, I have to visualize it in my mind about how I want it. And until I have that clarity in my mind, there are times when I probably wouldn't have clicked a picture, even if there's an aircraft in front of me.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Kedar, over to you. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's yeah, like aviation photography is kind of like a combination of landscape, wedding, night shoots, and all that. Because again, it's like wildlife and all that stuff, right? Because one, it's unpredictable. You cannot predict the weather, the lighting. Sometimes you can control, to a certain extent, and sometimes if you are like at an air shows, it's like one pass for the day, and that's it. If you don't get it, then you don't get it. Uh, and so that's kind of like about the subject, of course. And then Sanjay and Angad have mentioned about like trying to anticipate what the subject is going to do in a profile demo display, or whatever it is. And then the second thing, I think it's know your gear, right? Know what it is capable of, what the limits of the gear are. How, say for example, you're doing a low light, like it's an evening shot, and then if you have a camera that can give you great stuff with, say ISO 800, but then you can't go anymore after that. So you need to know, how to offset that, right? How much can you put the gear to its limits. Know your gear totally well. Even while shooting, like my eye will still wander over to what the shutter speeds are, because sometimes, like where you wanted to use a shutter priority, and then but you are in say aperture priority and it's a faster shutter speed, and maybe the props are frozen. Then you still need to have that presence of mind that, oh, I think I heard a click which was more faster than I anticipated. Yeah. And then you kind of like, I'm in the wrong, I'm in the wrong mode. Then switch over to shutter speed. So it's all about like getting to know your gear, your subjects, and then be prepared for. Um, I would say if you're like going to an air show, it's a whole like 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning to whatever 6 o'clock in the evening, until the guards kind of come up and then kick you off the booth. Because you just want to capture the last light and all that stuff. So just be prepared to be physically fit, and keep yourself hydrated. Sometimes it involves long hikes that we do in to capture like these guys in the low levels. So yeah, so it's combination of everything.
Visual to shoot before you visualize. Just need 70, roger, report time southeast, credentialed for midway, and yield selected.
Great, great. Yeah, you've provided me a lot of openings for questions I want to ask, but I think the first one is what modes are you typically shooting in, and do you typically cap your ISO at a certain number so that you don't get too grainy an image? And what you were mentioning earlier, just for the audience, is that a propeller-driven aircraft or a helicopter, if the blades are frozen, it looks very odd. And so, good photographers slow it down a little bit so that the blades are in motion or blurred, what's called prop blur. And that's what Kedar was talking about. So yeah, what sort of settings do you recommend people use for different
Yeah.
conditions?
So it depends again, like from a person's preference. But for me, I use like aperture priority for fast jets, and I can just, like in that case, I can control the depth of what they call the DOF, depth of focus or something, and then I'll leave the shutter speed, to the camera. In case of propellers or rotors, I exactly know what shutter speed I want. So then, in that case, I move over to shutter priority and let the camera figure out what the aperture is. And as far as the ISO is concerned, again, like yeah, like the higher the ISO, the higher the noise that you get. So people still like, so that's why you get into like the fast lens with a really wide aperture. So then you don't have to bump up the ISO and introduce too much noise in your photos. But yeah, that's kind of like the general feeling. But then I've got like some other friends who will always shoot in shutter priority, no matter what, because like sometimes if it's low light and it's a bit iffy, then I go manual because I exactly know what my exposure needs to be. But then some of my other friends, they will always be in like either aperture priority or shutter priority. They will shoot, they will increase the shutter speed for jets and decrease it for propellers. So it all depends upon personal preference.
Okay. How about you guys, Angad, Sanjay?
Yeah, I'm more or less similar to what Kedar uses. And like him, I mean, the more challenging. I mean, with cameras these days, you can fairly confidently let them figure out the settings in aperture or shutter priority, as the case may be. I generally shoot aperture priority because I like to stop down a little bit to maximize sharpness, minimize vignetting, that sort of thing. But when I'm shooting props or helicopters, I'll switch to shutter, set the desired shutter speed. There's also an element of risk taking, if you will. Sometimes if you have just one shot at getting a usable image, at least I will tend to go a little conservative with shutter speeds. Maybe like a 1/400th or something like that, even for a helicopter, which is not ideal. It does show a little motion blur, but it's not ideal. But it's good for that one shot if you need to, these once in a lifetime kind of shots. When I was shooting the Apache induction, for example, in Pathankot, now you're not going to get that. Induction water cannon shot too many times in your life, unless I'm around when they're being retired finally. So
Right.
I set myself at 400 for those shots, and then once I knew I got the sort of money shot, as it were, then I switched back to much lower speeds to get nice, dramatic prop and rotor blur, things like that. And yeah, when you have bad weather or bad light conditions, anything from overcast to early morning, late evening, then I also prefer to go manual because then you can sort of fine tune and control which elements of the exposure triangle you want where.
Yep, Kedar and Angad have said it all. Uh, I'm also a person who sticks to aperture priority, especially when I'm doing air-to-air photography. I don't take any chances there, so I stick to air-to-air unless it is a helicopter or a transport aircraft with a propeller. So then I move on to shutter priority. So I go with what these two gentlemen have said, and there's nothing much I have to add there.
Great, great. So I think you've given me another segue into my next question. So just love to hear your experiences. I know, Sanjay, you've done some aerial photography, not just in India, but also you flew, if I remember correctly, with a aerobatic team in somewhere in one of the Scandinavian countries. So just love to hear about some of these experiences, anecdotes, favorite photo shoot that you might have had. We'll start with you, Sanjay.
Yeah. So the aerobatic team that I flew with was the Baltic Beast. It's an Latvian privately held aerobatic team, and they fly the L-39s. So I had a chance to fly with them in Finland. I think about 6, 7 years ago, and that was my first aerobatic flying, if I could say so, the formation aerobatic flying. And yeah, I mean, it was well, it was quite exciting, but more than all that, I still remember the briefing that I had before we got into the cockpit. And I mean, I was told about certain maneuvers that they're going to do, the formations that they were going to do, and all that stuff. And then later, they told me that they will brief me about the emergency procedures once I was in the cockpit, or the ejection procedures. So once I was harnessed inside the cockpit, nobody told me what to do if in case of an emergency, and how do I eject. So I just asked the captain or the pilot, "What you told me you will teach me what is it that I need to do?" And all that he said is, "Don't worry, there'll be no emergency." So I was just thinking, should I should I remove the harness, get out of the plane? Boss, this guy is too overconfident, and whatever. So, but yeah, so you start off with a lot of apprehension because it's the first time you're doing it, or you're not doing it like the other formation aerobatic team pilots. They do it every day, day in and day out. So what I remember is there was one maneuver. I think we dived from about 8,000 feet to about 1,000 feet. So that was like the negative G that went in was unbelievable. And there was another, and then we come straight over the runway, low over the runway, and do a 5G left turn. So, and in fact, I have GoPro videos of myself in the cockpit during these maneuvers, and I almost blacked out. So I could make out I was in the graying out area at that point of time and all that. But it was amazing. So, like that, I have also done. I've flown in certain. Later on, I've flown in certain fighter aircrafts, also for air-to-air photography. So, what happens is when you're doing an air-to-air in another fighter, um, a lot of aerobatics kind of maneuvers do happen there also, because you want our aircraft to be positioned in a certain way vis-a-vis the subject aircraft and stuff like that. So your pilot is actually flying you upside down, moving from left to right in just a span of say 5 seconds and stuff like that. So there's a lot of G forces that actually go on act on your body, and your camera gets very heavy. Your shoulders start spinning. You're not able to lift the camera to the to your even to your eyes to view from it. So it starts getting heavy, and of course the G forces themselves are having an effect on your body. But all great experiences, and would love to do some more. Yeah,
Well, sounds like a lot of pressure because you've got all of these things weighing you down. You've got your cameras, and you've got to take that shot, which you probably have a second or 2 seconds in which it's perfectly positioned. So,
exactly. And
it's
there's no retake.
quite a bit of
There are no
pressure.
retakes here once
No
you're in the
retake.
air, and everybody is
Yeah,
moving so fast, and everybody has been briefed to do certain things. And I like the professionalism. I mean, the way aviators stick to what has been briefed on the ground. Uh, I mean, it's amazing. So
right. Wow. Angad, how about you? Your experiences from favorite photo shoots?
Oh, I'm the new guy when it comes to aerial photography in this August company of mine. But no, I did a shoot, in fact, earlier this. Oh, I beg your pardon. About a year ago, almost exactly a year ago now, with HAL. I think Sanjay and I flew back to back. We were shooting alongside the Aero India flypasts. So they sort of plugged us into the flypast schedule and took us up, and we did some nice photographs. I had the IJT and the HTT on my, and the LCA, of course, on my left in the good light. So I got some nice shots, and yeah, I think Sanjay. One thing Sanjay neglected to mention is the neck pain when you're maneuvering, and if you're in an awkward position and your pilot pulls a little bit of G, the weight of the helmet and all that, it does kind of twist you in ways that you did not think was possible. But other than that, yeah, he covered most of it. I've actually also shot from transport and helicopters, and from a let's say from a more relaxed perspective, that's definitely the more fun aerial photography. And also less pressure because the speeds are slower, and the whole thing feels a little more relaxed. But for the most dramatic aerial shots, I don't think anything beats fighter to fighter.
Hmm. And tell me, the canopy is not distorting the image in some way, is it?
It doesn't distort the image optically, but reflections are a big issue. So you have to position yourself and the subject aircraft correctly against the sun, relative to the sun, and if you have one of those cloth or rubber silicon lens hoods to block reflections, that also helps. But it's all to limited degrees. You have to plan basically to clear reflections.
Okay. Kedar, you've had, I think, some very exciting aerial photography opportunities and things like that. So just love to hear about some of your experiences, your favorite photo shoots.
Yeah, like uh, one of the recent ones. This was last year in June, I think, or June or July, and like this was after like the whole 2020 was really bad, right? Like there was nothing going on. We still managed to do something, but then 2021 brought some vaccines and all that, and I was like, you know, sh- two shots, in me, and I'm like raring to go somewhere. And so I called up a friend who was up in Ilson Air Force Base, and like, hey, let's do something, and so I can write a article on the F-35s coming up over there, the two new squadrons of F-35s being stood up over there. So he put me in touch with the PA. The PA was absolutely awesome, and then we coordinated that. Okay, right, let's do 2 days of shooting from here and there, interviews in that, and then there was a tanker shoot for which the active duty Air Force had to coordinate with the Air National Guard because it's their tankers, the KC-135. So there's going back and forth on that. There's no nothing happening, and then couple of days before I was about to go, finally the PA says, "Oh, okay, the Alaska ANG is good to go. We will probably do that on the last day. You will go up in the morning and then we'll do some air to airs with the F-35s." So I'm pretty stoked. I'm like, okay, cool, that's great. And so the plan was to kind of meet the tanker crew or some of the fighter guys and just brief them and like, hey, this is what I want to do. And so the first day was fine. The second day, I'm like looking for a time window. Like, hey, we were supposed to meet, the tanker guys. And as every well laid out plan goes out the window, right, at first contact. That's what happened. She at the beginning of the second day, she says, "Oh, you know what? You need to be here at 5:30 in the morning tomorrow because we are wheels up 6:30 with the tanker." And I'm like, that's and Ilson is like maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes away from Fairbanks, which is the nearest town. So I'm like, in order to reach there at 5:30, I'm like reverse engineering the clock, right? What time do I need to get out and all that? And I was like, oh man, like I really need to sleep early tonight. And towards the evening, that schedule changed to like, oh, you know what? It's a much more humane, 11 o'clock. So you need to be here by 9 or 10 o'clock. I'm like, okay, that's cool, that's fine. So then I get on base at 10. We go around to the Air National Guard building, and the other contact explains that, oh, you know what? The tanker guys are briefing with the fighter guys, so they will just meet you by the aircraft. I'm like, okay. So someone drives us to the tanker, and I'm still trying to get some rapport done. Like, hey, I brief the boom on that. Hey, this is what I want the fighters to do, but there is literally no time. And then these guys come up and they are in a hurry. Okay, you know what? Let's go. Let's go. Everyone load up, and then we'll get. We need to go fast. So we all load up, and there's literally no time for briefing and all that. And in their briefing, like the whole tanker crew, I hear one of the guys say, "So we are there were supposed to be two tankers. one for the red air and one for the blue air, which was just F-35s. And so I get up and I listen to the guy who's giving a brief to the crew. Like, hey, we are the red air tanker, and we'll go here. This is our tanker track, and this is what we'll do. And I suddenly my ears perk up. Like, hey, I'm here to shoot the F-35s, and if this is the red air tanker, then I'm just going to get F-16s, which is not what I came here to shoot. Like, I love them, but this is not what I came here to shoot. So after I wait for the briefing is over, and then I go and ask him like, "Hey, I thought that you mentioned it's a red air tanker. Are you just getting Vipers or?" He's like, "No, we are getting both." I'm like, "Okay, sweet, that's awesome because then I can get both the F-16s, the whole aggressor F-16s and the F-35s." So everyone's good. I'm like thanking my stars, and then the crew lets me sit in the seat behind the pilot, and then I'm wearing the headphones, and we are about to push up, and the pilot says, "Hey, let's bring up Demon Ops, which is the fighter frequency. Like, hey, let's check in with them and see what's up." So she checks up with Demon Ops, and then I hear a voice says, "Oh, you know what? Can you hold for 20 minutes because the clock's shifted right? Like the thing is postponed by 20 minutes or something." And she's like, "Okay." And here we are, like engines up, we are like almost ready to go. And like, okay, fine. So we just wait. And during the discussion, she brings up like, "Oh, you know what? I hope they don't cancel." And I'm like, "Come on, guys, we are like, like just pushing out, and don't say cancel, don't jinx it." And it was raining, and that's the other thing, that it was raining the previous day. It was raining the morning. So I'm like, I hope the windows are going to be good because otherwise, if the windows are bad, then there's no photos. So so all that stuff, I'm praying, I'm crossing fingers and toes, and then finally we get the word that, hey, the range is open, you're good to go, and then push out, and then the rest is history, as they say. But that like it's not over until it's over. It's always that nail biting, excitement that, oh, I hope to God that this goes through. But yeah, like some of the nail biting, stuff that happens.
Yeah. You also shot over Europe in a Skyvan. I've seen some of your pictures. What is the Skyvan and what was
Yeah.
that like? And so you're just pottering around at 120 knots and they are making passes at you from behind, is it?
No, so this is like a whole operation run by Eric Keckelberg and his whole crew, aviation photo crew. They coordinate with Philip Artweger, who's the owner of the operator of the Skyvan. And they have gotten, I think, new propellers and new engines so that they, I think, make 160 knots or 165 knots. And then these people, they like there was a if there's an air show in town, they will coordinate with the military guys, the ATC guys, and they will just basically get a piece of the sky, and they will coordinate with these guys saying, "Hey, we'll be circling here. If you can, if you are approaching this base at this time, then give us like 10 minutes." And so they format with us like whatever fuel time that they have, and then sometimes they will do passes if they are unable to hold behind the Skyvan. But all the new fighters, they're pretty good. They are able to hold, except for like the Phantoms, the F4 Phantoms, which are like they need speed. Right? They can't go slow.
Super, super.
Visual to shoot before noon of visual. Just need 70, like your report that southeast, credentialed, east for the midway, and you'll select this one.
So, obviously to get these opportunities to shoot from the air and fly with the aerobatic team or with the IJT and the HTT-40, you have to be at the top of your game, and these manufacturers or air forces have to invite you in. How does one get credentialed? How do you get to this point where you're being invited to be that one person that they trust with that opportunity to get that one shot? Maybe we'll start with you, Kedar, while
Yeah,
your
I think
mic
it's
is on.
it's all up to like a track record. I think because anyone who's investing his time and effort uh, needs to kind of like be assured that one, you are safe, that whatever you have done in the past, that's all safe. flight safety is paramount. Nothing trumps that. And then it's all about like what your work is about, right? How well have you done in the past, and then probably I think that's the one. I would say that that might be the one. Some of the factors to consider of why would I give you a chance to or why would I give you an opportunity to do this, something like that.
Right, right. Sanjay, how about you? How does the process work on the Indian side, particularly?
Guns, I feel that one is, of course, the work, definitely your professionalism and all that stuff. It also comes down to the fact that how much can they trust you? Because you get to see a lot of activities or operations which are quite sensitive, which the normal public doesn't get to see when you're in an aircraft or when you're in an airbase. So it's how much they can trust you with things which you shouldn't be speaking about with others. So I think in that sense, it goes a long way in building up that trust and that relationship with officers of the military. And I think it's a matter of time before they realize that you're people who can be uh, one amongst them and take good pictures, which they can probably use it for their own publicity and training and other activities. But yes, in India, it's not easy. I mean, especially given the security scenario that we live in, a lot of things can go wrong even after you've taken the picture, even after you've gone into a base or flown with an air force and all that stuff. Things can still go wrong in terms of the documentation, security issues, and stuff like that because they sometimes just take away the photos or whatever. But I do understand where they come from because the threat perception that India has is quite high. But the counter to that is if you're looking at Kedar, Angad, or myself, and many others like us, we've been doing this for many, many years, at least 1.5, 2 decades. We are not fly by night operators. And I think there should be some additional trust level that they should also come up with people who have been in this uh, profession for so long and who can be, you know, one of them. So, but yeah, every time I apply to visit an airbase, approval for visiting an airbase, I mean, till I get it, till I reach the airbase and start photography, I still am not sure whether I can do it. So, it's not a blanket approval at all.
Angad, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I think trust and safety covers most of it. I mean, also on the Indian subject, there is an issue of just bureaucracy. So uh, there are restrictions on civilians flying aboard military aircraft. Period. Any military aircraft. Um, so even when for example there's the military organizes an airlift for journalists to go from point A to point B to cover an event in Aero India or any official Ministry of Defense event, there is still a bureaucratic overhead to approving something as simple as that. So quite the opposite of, for example, Kedar's Alaskan experience, where he gets to coordinate these sort of things on the fly with the PAO in Alaska, despite the fact that he's a foreign national and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I'm while I'm not a fan of the bureaucracy, obviously, I'm you have to make allowances, and I'm okay with that. It is what it is. I mean, like Sanjay, I'm always wishing for things to get easier for us, but I think. For lack of a better phrase, we've all sort of made our bones, right? And I'd like to certainly think that we've all done good work on behalf of all the people we've flown with, um, or who've allowed us access to their bases and ranges and things like that. So from that perspective, from the trust and safety perspective, I think we've done as much as we could, and we've reaped the benefits of that, for which we're certainly grateful. And then, yeah, the bureaucracy will resolve itself in time, I'm sure. As everyone sort of gets more into the groove of and we're seeing it happen almost real time. with military photography and videography. They are getting more and more open to this medium or these mediums, and they want to get more into this space. So I think it's just a matter of time, and hopefully we're all around and active to take advantage of it.
And I've always been curious, once you finish, Sanjay, you had mentioned they may take away your pictures. I'm wondering, do they always take away and inspect all the pictures to make sure that, there's something that needs to be blurred out, an antenna here or something there? Do they do something like that to all your pictures before they release it to you? And how does that approval process work? And is it different in the US versus Europe versus India? Angad, maybe you can start.
So I've had mixed experiences. It also depends on the local authorities, on who cleared your shoot, when, how. So there's a lot of variables in play. Um, I haven't shot in the US in forever, but I do remember a shoot I did in 2000 and I was going to say 10 or 11, where we were briefed on certain things that we're not supposed to shoot. Period. And certain angles. So there is a sort of misconception that the Western sort of air arms are just generally more open and relaxed about these sort of things. And by and large, it's true. But they also have their own systems and processes and things that they are worried about, as we do here in India. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just briefed, right? And it's a trust thing. We're going to ask you not to shoot the B2 from the rear, and we're going to cross our fingers and hope that this entire crowd of photographers that we've allowed into the base will respect that. In other cases, they take your photographs and release them back to you after censoring, which just there's no. I've never been on the receiving end of any editing requests, except of course for the infamous serial number removals that the Indians require. But generally speaking, they will delete photographs. Just don't this can't be used. So they'll remove it, or they'll ask you not to use it. And in cases where they don't take your photographs, they just ask you to clear them before publishing, because um, you know it's again not too much of an imposition, I think, from the perspective of what they're allowing us to do, to just edit 10-15 days worth of photographs and just send half a dozen or so back to the authorities, the Air Force or whoever let you do it, to say, listen, are these 10-15 photos good to go, or would you like me to publish different ones?
Right, right. Kedar, what's been your experience on the US side?
Yeah, so I think it's again like here also it happens. Like they will like it all depends upon like the nature of the units taking part, the authorities as well. I've been there in the Air National Guard of Wisconsin. I think they were doing an exercise, and every time they have reviewed like on the spot, like after a day's shooting, they will have a review session where a couple of those guys will come up and they will delete stuff that they deem that hey, no, this is not possible. There have been instances where people's cards have been taken and then for like offline screening or whatever, and the cards have been mailed to them afterwards or whatever. So it happens here as well. And then kind of like in India, it's again like it again depends upon like from base to base, whatever. But what I think Angad said, it's basically to do with like either a trust factor, and as again Sanjay I think made a good point that we are not like one time access and then I do whatever I want and spoil it for the others. We have been doing it since a number of years, so there's still that trust and that confidence that yeah, if I tell him something that he shouldn't be doing, then I trust him not to do it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Sanjay, coming to you, any interesting incidents that you've had in the air that you'd like to share with the audience that put us in the cockpit with you, so to speak?
Yeah, quite a few actually. Uh, one was when I flew in the Su-30. I was told not to. I was told to stow away my camera during takeoff and landing. So that was my first sortie in the Su-30, and uh, I had stored my camera on the right side where they had told me to. And as we took off, the pilot did a steep takeoff, and the camera just slid down. You know, it was. I just thought the camera just went back, went behind somewhere, and I started panicking, and I just could not find it. Though the strap was on my wrist, I just could not find the camera body. So I started panicking, and I announced it on the radio to the pilot, saying, "Can you level out a little bit? I'm not able to find my camera." And so the panic set in his cockpit also, because these are extremely dangerous situations. Even if let's say a coin, a 1 rupee coin falls on the floor, I mean it's an emergency. So, but fortunately, yes, I found it. And as the cockpit is so tight, you can't move around much. And the other incident that I remember was when I was doing some air-to-air photography in Ladakh. Uh, the door of my cheetah helicopter opened, and this was again a rendezvous that we were doing with the ALH and the Cheetal, which were on high altitude trials in Ladakh. So those two aircraft were coming from a different base. My Cheetah was from a different base, so I had to quickly get in, and so I had not worn my seat belts too, because it was all on the go. So as we were moving, I heard on my headphones the pilot announcing the doors open, the doors open. So I was focusing on the ALH at that time, and I was looking at. I don't see the ALH door opened or the Cheetal door opening. So I asked, "Is it on the right side?" Because we were on the left of the other two aircraft. He said, "No, it's on the left side." So I said, "No, I'm not able to see it on the left." He said, "It's our door which is open." And you know what? So my back was towards the door which was open, and I'm not wearing seat belts. We were at about 14,000 feet, and I started sweating. It was cold weather, high altitude trials, and I started sweating. So finally, somehow we managed, thanks to the skills of Brigadier Sidhu, we managed to close the door. He was the pilot
Oh,
in
he was
command.
the
He was
pilot.
the colonel at that time.
Right.
Yeah, and that happened. And recently, when I was shooting the LCH light combat helicopters missile firing trials at Chandipur, I was flying the Mi-17, and there were different profiles of firing that the LCH was doing, and I was flying in the Mi-17 as a chase. So the Mi-17 is not designed to do the kind of maneuvers that an LCH does. So in a huge helicopter, which was putting its nose down, going towards the water, and again leveling off, and then the missile fires from the LCH and all that. So we were following the LCH the way she was actually maneuvering, and it's not easy at all. And we were over water, and I was like, at the door opened with my feet on the seat. I was standing with my feet on the seat so that I don't get Muna. Then I told the gunner just to hold my waist so that I don't fall off the door and things like that. So, I mean, unbelievable experiences, but quite a few like that. And I remember in one more incident when I was flying the Kirans. Uh, we had to do the Make in India formation from the top. So we were flying upside down over a formation of five other aircraft, and suddenly both me and my pilot lost sight of those five. And to now look for those, he had to maneuver quite a bit. And but of course, great pilot, fantastic flying skills and all that. But of course, maybe he's so used to it. But for me, it was new, and panic all around. So,
Right.
but very exciting.
Great. So, I'm sure I've taken almost an hour of your time. I'm sure the audience is all fired up to pick up their cameras and go out. What are some good plane spotting locations in India and in the US? I know you have these, I've heard of the Mark Loop in the UK, and of course, there are places in the US too, where one can see aircraft flying high speed through the valleys. What are some of your favorite plane spotting locations that you would recommend the public can take their camera and go? And we'll start with Angad and Sanjay on the India side, and then come to you, Kedar, to wrap up.
Um, that's a loaded question, Guns. India's not exactly conducive for plane spotting. Um, I mean, technically it's illegal. Um, so there's a DGCA circular that allows you to finally, after 75 years, allows you to photograph aircraft inside an airport once you're as a passenger, but it's still technically illegal for me to be wandering around the fence with a camera. That said, Delhi is great. The Dwarka approaches for civil spotting or even interesting military traffic every now and again is great. Bombay is great as well. There's quite a few vantage points around the airport, which is one of the unintended benefits of that sort of urban sprawl around Santa Cruz. And there are a few sort of smaller, unique airports dotted around the country. Really, there are quite interesting to spot from if you take the time to explore the surrounding areas and generally steer clear of the authorities. I mean, I shouldn't be recommending that people skulk around, but it really is the only way to do it. Um, and of course, I mean, as far as public access and doing everything above board is concerned, Aero India is great. I mean, I mean, the show is a huge crowd and all that, but the flying is good, the light is good, and the distances are generally fairly manageable for even public access. So I quite like, it you get kind of used to it and you take it for granted because it's the home show in a sense. But sometimes I think about other places and bases and air shows that I photographed, and Yelahanka is actually quite a fun one.
Okay, got it. Sanjay, what are some of your favorite locations to photograph from?
I agree with Angad. Yeah, I agree with Angad that plane spotting is not easy in India because of the rules. However, my favorite locations for photography have been the Northeast. Lovely, what would you say, greenery and stuff in the background, which actually gives you a lot of scope to experiment also. And because many a time, because of the background, even the photograph will become much better. And my other favorite place is Ladakh. So the Himalayas are another place which will actually bring in a lot of emotion into a picture. So these are my two favorite places.
So again, like I'll give the same advice as Sanjay and Angada regarding India, because even I don't go to Mumbai or whatever places. I just don't want to risk it, and secondly, I don't want to burn anyone's credit that I have, in order to kind of get me out of jail card, kind of thing. But as far as like the other like US is concerned, like I like Nellis Air Force Base outside like Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, yeah. So if anybody's on a holiday to Las Vegas, that's one place to go.
Yeah, like they have the red flag, so there everyone comes, like the UK, the Germans, all they bring their own fighter aircraft, and you can just park the vehicle, outside the base. There are some couple of locations, roads that you can just park and take pictures. So nothing like.
Amazing, great. Want to thank you all for taking the time today. This has been a lovely 1 hour conversation. I've learned so much and really almost felt like I was with you in that Skyvan or with you in that Sukhoi 30, Sanjay. Really grateful to you guys, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah, no worries, guns. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Gans.
Thanks for having us, Guns. Really enjoyed this.
Visual to before the bridge landing. Just need 70, like your report time southeast, credentialed, for midway, and you selected.
Well, folks, that's all we have time for this week. In the meantime, sign up for updates at blueskiespodcast.com. There you'll find links to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also write to us with your comments, questions, suggestions, and feedback from the website or to blueskies@prganapati.com. Subscribe to the podcast on any podcasting platform such as Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even on YouTube. If you like what you heard, share it with your friends, give us a rating in your favorite podcasting app, and write us a review. It will help other people find us. I want to give my thanks to Saurav Chordia for our logo and Prithvik for the music. I want to reiterate that all the views expressed here are personal, and this podcast has not been approved by or reviewed by the Air Force, Ministry of Defense, or any branch of the government. In the meantime, stay safe and Jai Hind.